Coming up on Tech News today, a leaked draft bill shows that Congress might be looking to eliminate encryption as we know it in the U.S. Also, Yahoo has some suitors, and I'll give you a hint. Verizon might soon own Internet 1.0. Sam Machkovech considers Tilt Brush to be HTC Vive's killer app. BMW launches a ride-sharing service in Seattle, and controlling your sofa with your phone. It's possible, and we'll talk about it next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit. Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1488, recorded Friday, April 8th, 2016. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron will send you all the ingredients to cook fresh, delicious meals with simple step-by-step instructions right to your door. See what's on the menu this week and get your first 2 meals free by going to blueapron.com/twit. That's blueapron.com/twit. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we, talk about some of the biggest tech news stories of the day with people who are generally pretty passionate about technology. I'm Jason Howell. Megan Maroney is off. She's on assignment, and that assignment is at home, resting in bed, getting better because she is not feeling well. See, if I had a tumbleweed, I'd throw it through her camera so you get a sense of how she feels up in her head right now. But she's resting. I'm sure she'll be back on Monday, and even if she's not, it's okay. We got this, Megan. Take your time. But joining us for the show today, not just a gaming segment, but for the entire show, is Sam Machkovech from Ars Technica. How's it going, Sam?
Oh, don't mind me. I'm just working.
Oh, is that what you call working? I see.
Sure, why not? I
That's
guess.
very different from my working that I've been doing all afternoon. So I'm very jealous, actually. It's good to have you on today. Definitely a couple of these stories hit close to home. One quite literally, like in your backyard or your front yard, right off your porch. So we're going to get to that in a second. But to start things off, let's talk a little bit about encryption. The encryption debate raging on. If anyone thought that Congress would give the matter a level-headed fair shake, apparently they have another thing coming. A Senate draft bill that was penned by Senator Dianne Feinstein and Richard Burr was leaked online last night, giving a first-hand look at Congress's take on the power the U.S. government should have over encryption. The bill, titled Compliance with Court Orders Act of 2016, or 2016, as I'm always trying to say, has language to the tune of requiring companies to comply with a court order by offering, quote, responsive, intelligible information or data or appropriate technical assistance to the government. It's important to note the usage of the word intelligible. That's a big reason why people are very up in arms about this leaked draft. Encrypted communication is, by its definition, not at all intelligible. That's what it is. It would be incumbent upon the company to provide that access when asked to do so, according to this bill. And Sam, it really seems like when we were talking, when all the news was about the Apple FBI kind of case and the potential, outcome of that, seeing that through to the end, everybody was kind of going back to the idea that, well, we should get Congress involved because they'll take a level-headed approach and they'll provide something, that makes sense for everyone. Here's Congress's approach. What do you think?
Congress's approach has clearly been to not get the nerds on it. I believe that was the term that was used years ago in some other hearing about getting technology law in gear. This is a mess. In fact, Ars Technica, I'm not sure what story, if any, we're going to be running on this because it reads like utter nonsense, both from a technological perspective and from a law perspective. There's too much about this that would be hard to have proven on constitutional grounds and get all the way through, which is why the White House has already come out and publicly said that they would not endorse this bill. Now, the basics, I would love for you to dig in more on this. I've been a little crazy today, but it there looks like they're essentially making a lot of calls about leaving everything so wide open that it wouldn't be long until the United States was just hacked left and right in every single thing that we possibly use encryption for legitimate purposes.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, the bill itself defines, and mind you, I should reiterate, this is a leak. Could be outdated at this point. It could be, inauthentic. I'm doubting that it's inauthentic, because everybody's kind of poring over it, and it seems at least to a certain degree that the threat is that it's true. It's just we don't know at what point this is, because it's not an official bill by any means at this point. But it defines intelligible communication as decrypted, deciphered, decoded, demodulated, or de-obfuscated to its original form. So it's basically what it's doing is taking everything that you know about encryption, and only in the U.S., right? Because this is only to members of the United States, taking encryption as we know it and pretty much ensuring that companies are required to give them access on demand to that encrypted information, backdoor, whatever you want to call it. This is it. This is the whole, the kit and caboodle right here.
Now, I will say, I was at South by Southwest Interactive where President Obama spoke on this specific subject. He had said, I can't speak about Apple versus FBI, and then he went on to pretty much talk about Apple versus FBI. He warned very much about the idea that if we do not get our technology partners involved in the United States with the U.S. government to work out some sort of arrangement, some sort of path towards security-related scenarios where information can be decrypted or can be opened up, that Congress will just act on its own without any input or any help from the technology community. And I almost wonder if this leak was kind of this threat in action, this idea that it's gonna be even worse if you in the technology sector don't join in. That being said, I don't think that threat is enough to give anybody the ability to just ramrod this sort of decryption path down our throats. End-to-end encryption is in everything we use. Mm-hmm. For very, very good reasons. And there's many other ways that law enforcement can get around and find information in a constitutional way. The Constitution is there for a reason in terms of what can and cannot be picked up by the government. And you have to work within that constitutional framework. The fact that I can encrypt communication if I'm a criminal to another criminal does not mean I cannot be caught. It does not mean I do not deserve due process. So I think that there's just a lot of conversation and work that's going to have to be done in this direction. And I really hope that this sort of leak doesn't send us on some sort of crazy goose chase towards a compromise. There's still got to be something that's just constitutionally sound and technologically feasible.
Yeah, I think what bothers me a little bit, there are many things that kind of bother me about what I've read about this in its current form. But, beyond that is kind of the implication that the U.S. is more secure by being less secure, even though the rest of the world is actually more secure. Basically eliminating encryption inside the U.S. only harms just the U.S. and everybody else is protected.
No other country is going to do anything with that sort of push. Not at all. No, China's just going to be like, whatever.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, totally.
Russia's just going to wink at it. Yeah.
It just feels very short-sighted, and I don't know what the the long-term economic kind of implications of that are too, because anyone outside of the U.S. knows, if this were to be the case, knows kind of the weakened security position inside the U.S. That can really have long-term financial negative effects. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Well, continuing on that thread, kind of, sort of, the U.S. government might have figured out a solution to its iPhone access problem in the San Bernardino case, but a filing today shows that it still wants Apple's help in a New York drug smuggling case that had become kind of a bellwether of sorts during the San Bernardino case, while that was still a hot-button topic. In the New York case, Judge Orenstein had rejected the government's use of the All Writs Act, if you remember, on terms of being too expansive and casting doubt on the constitutionality of all writs. The government has now appealed, something that was unsure of happening in light of the fact that the government had also retreated, as it did in the San Bernardino case. So kind of going, still kind of pursuing this path. I think in this case, Apple and the government have requested for the case to continue to set that precedent for future cases. It's interesting to kind of put these two stories side by side, because it feels like they're both kind of attempting the same thing, but from different angles, and one way more extreme than the other. But kind of tying it up. you wondered if this was going to happen. There it is. The story's going to continue on for months now.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the All Writs Act is this interesting kind of angle that's gone totally different ways with each case. And it's just going to be until the Supreme Court weighs in on these sorts of topics. I think we're going to end up with every single side throwing something at every single judge, every single appeals process. Until then, I think we're just going to have headline after headline, but we're not really going to get anywhere until the Supreme Court actually rules on this case, which makes the current Supreme Court lack of a ninth justice that much more intriguing and interesting. So yeah, I think we're just going to end up, we're going to be able to have a story like this every 12 to 15 days, either this case or similar cases like it. So it's going to be an interesting bit of limbo and hemming and hawing on all sides, and everyone's going to demand and want some sort of response. I'm really tempted. I'd like to just sit on my hands and wait, because there's just nothing is going to, Apple's not just going to give its stuff away or give its help willingly. They've made that very clear. You know, the Apple told reporters that they're disappointed with the government's move currently for this New York case. They say the government is trying to set a legal precedent, and it's not in a position to do so as far as Apple's concerned.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, in New York, I think there's some, 100 and some odd other cases that could follow in the direction of this one. So anytime you ever heard, it's just about one phone, it's actually about a lot. It's just, here you go. It's context. And yeah, I agree with you. We're going to hear a lot more about these types of stories as we go forward. We already are. I almost feel a little saturated. But then at the same time, I don't want to feel overly saturated to the point to where I stop paying attention. And I think there's that risk. And we feel that in light of the Snowden kind of leaks over the past couple of years, almost this point of, there's so much of this information out there that people start to disconnect from it. And maybe not caring is the wrong way to phrase it, but in essence, they stop paying attention, and out of sight, out of mind. Lots of bad things can happen.
Yeah, I think there's just enough room on all sides in terms of data providers, ISPs, companies like Apple. I think every company has its legal ducks in a row as far as precedent is concerned in state and national law of what they are and are not compelled to help any investigation with. So that's going to continue. I think everyone's just going to stick to those ironclad lines of investigators wanting as much data as possible, and every company with a giant legal team like Apple and Verizon and any other giant company like that saying, we know what we can do. We know what we are and not compelled to do. So that's you're just going to see a lot of iron walling. But I don't think that means the conversation should stop. I just think that means the prolonged process that is the American judicial system is going to drag this out until we really get some definitive answers that will then be appealed ad nauseum, and so on and so on.
Yeah. Prolonged being the key word. More and more sources are leaking out little breadcrumb trails that point to an imminent bidding war for Yahoo. War, maybe strong word. Sources say a deadline for bids has been pushed out to April 18th. Some big names are getting involved. Google reportedly has expressed interest, kind of kick the tires of Yahoo, but people think that an offer there is unlikely. AT&T and Comcast have inquired. They remain unconvinced. Ahead of the pack, however, appears to be Verizon, who has actually mentioned many times in the past its intentions to get involved, or at least its interest to. Verizon plans to make a bid and possibly even acquire Yahoo's Japan Corp stake if it makes the deal, in fact, more enticing to Yahoo. And that last part's kind of a big consideration here, because Yahoo, its core business is valued right around $8 billion. Its stake in Japan Corp is valued at around $8.5 billion. If there's a company that wants to come in and take both of them off of Yahoo's hands, Yahoo would be pretty darn happy about that, kind of more from a clean break perspective. But that really kind of isolates these suitors to these larger, bigger players like Verizon, and so maybe kind of limits the potential of like private equity firms to kind of roll in. Where do you stand on kind of the whole Yahoo, turning this Yahoo ship around? It really seems like Verizon, if this was to happen, is invested in old internet, because it will have AOL, and then it would have Yahoo. What do you think?
Well, I think the Japan side of it is the side that was not on the table, at least as far as long ago reports were, as Yahoo's been trying to figure out how to stay afloat since, Alibaba's kicking ass. Yahoo Japan is doing okay. Yahoo Core, just the core Yahoo elements, not so much. So it almost feels like, you can have one decent thing if you take this garbage. And so if that makes more sense in terms of why Verizon would be interested, because a lot of Yahoo's core stuff is what AOL essentially represented in terms of entertainment properties, in terms of media arms, in terms of gathering stories that are then sold to readers with advertising on top. That is a lot of what Yahoo already does, and that's kind of what AOL gave Verizon. The idea of Google coming in and taking that was essentially Google saying, okay, Verizon, we're going to one for one. We're going to have these sorts of systems in place, and it's not as much redundant. Google doesn't have, Google News could very well benefit from the processes and tools that Yahoo has for its sports and its entertainment pages and its video gathering. Not that YouTube is hurting necessarily, but a different sort of curation or news magazine if Google wanted to do that. But otherwise, I really think Yahoo Japan is the meat here, and Yahoo as a core service is just the nasty, crusty stick attached to it that you have to hold
legacy,
on to this stuff.
The really old stick that's just kind of still there and not broken yet. I don't see how a Google Yahoo thing would work. I also wonder if there would, like the FTC would allow that, considering Google and Yahoo are such big search players to begin with, side by side.
As we already realized with the last story, the federal government has some sort of things that it doesn't totally understand in terms of giant companies. So I wouldn't be shocked if the FTC just shrugged its shoulders and said, well, it's a tech company. I don't know. We're dumb. We're federal. I don't believe that would actually get in the way. I think it's really more of an issue of companies really stopping and saying what makes sense for our bottom line. I think that any deal like this could get shoved down regulators' throats in a way, because I just don't see common constituents really crying about Google and Yahoo. I think an average constituent is going to look at that deal and go, I don't care. Yahoo, what? It would not necessarily be good for anti-competitive practices, but I think that's the kind of thing that the FTC would shrug off and, pick a fight over something else instead.
Yeah, and it also just kind of knowing the kinds of companies that Google invests in. Google isn't really the company that comes along and buys up broken things. Like they come along and they buy things that are looking into the future. And I guess I would have a hard time seeing Google swoop in and pick up Yahoo. Google could just be doing its due diligence like it did in the Spectrum war, the Spectrum auction that happened a couple of years ago, by the way, against Verizon, who ended up probably spending more as a result of that in the 700 megahertz Spectrum auction. So who knows? Maybe this is tactical. You never know.
Could be.
Let's take a minute to remember the Brave browser from earlier this year, a couple of months ago anyways. It's the new browser created by ex-Mozilla CEO Brendan Eich that bakes ad blocking into the app. Brave has plans to replace ads on pages with its own ad inventory and then do a rev share on the impressions. They do that directly with the publishers that are having their own ad inventory blocked to the tune of 55% of the gross ad revenue going to the publishers. Users would also get 15%, and then the Brave and its ad partners would each get 15%. Users could also choose to donate their share to the publishers in the form of Bitcoins. This is kind of catching you all up to speed on Brave. So then here's a scenario. You're the publisher, and a browser removes the ads that you get paid for, replaces them with its own, and then pays you for only a piece of them. Do those terms sound fair? Publishers like New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and many more have registered a resounding no by filing a joint cease and desist to Brave yesterday. I know when I first heard about this, I was like, okay, it's interesting, but how in the world are they going to get away with stripping out the ads on a site and then putting in their own and then paying a portion of that back to the publishers? It never seemed to make a whole lot of sense to me. What do you think, Sam?
Well, first off, is Brave going to just PayPal the main address of the New York Times and Wall Street Journal? Just, here's a check at your doorstep. Like, how exactly does that get paid out? It's like, I don't know if they would just throw money randomly at the door, at the mailing address, like
here you
One
go,
World Trade Center or something, or if
our weekly Bitcoin delivery is here.
Right. Yeah. Just, in a little envelope, just a bunch of Bitcoins.
Yep.
I think this just all seems to really miss the point. of what people are doing when they decide to use an ad blocker. Ad blocking and whitelisting are these sort of things that people do because they don't like invasive ads. They don't like processes that eat up their computer. They want to reward. People choosing to control their own advertising is not the same as people saying, "Oh, I want this company to take my eyeballs and my advertising dollars."
Right.
I just think Brave completely misses the point of why someone would go to the trouble of installing a particular app or going and editing their own settings, their own host's file, or however they may do so, in order to control the content that comes into their computer. I just don't understand, beyond that, the kind of contractual things it would have to get into in order to legitimize its practice, because it's got to work out some specific contract stuff. It's going to do this revenue sharing with users, with companies, with itself, with charities. Lord knows what kind of financial institution it's trying to set itself up to be. It just sounds like a lot of attention-seeking grandstanding that doesn't have a real foot in really surviving and working as a full system. It's a great story for us to talk about, but I don't know how the heck it would actually work for more than like 8 days.
Yeah, that's kind of my question about it too. Now, the people behind Brave say, you Sam, illustrated a lot of the reasons why people use ad blockers, and they say, well, that's why we're doing this, because ad blocking introduces, it slows down, or ads slow down pages, it steals information, some of them are bad or whatever. What we do is we replace those ads with good ads that don't do those things, but still ads, of course. So if what you are is totally adverse to ads, then I suppose this isn't going to help you. But if you're adverse to the things that come along with ads, that's what they say that they're fixing here. But it just sounds really messy and complicated. And I don't know how rev share with their replaced ads is better than the ads that you already are choosing to put on your site. I mean, if ads are blocked, impressions go down. That diminishes the value for your future ad inventory. How is anybody happy about that? How is anybody willingly choosing to participate in that?
I think they're going about this all wrong. If they were going to these companies and saying, you know what, we're going to help you retain, we're going to help you keep eyeballs, we're going to help you build an ad platform that's agreeable to your readers, anything that has actual analysis and handshakes and partnerships with the content providers, that might be something. And it's almost like they're kind of announcing that and then just throwing up a couple of middle fingers and going, we're just going to create our own total platform of control. It just sounds like garbage.
We'll see what happens, and maybe we'll make some money too. Yeah. All right, so the BMW has a new car sharing service called Reach Now. It's being launched in Seattle, and wouldn't you know it, we have a Seattleite, a Seattler. What do we call you? Are you
Seattleite?
Seattleite. There we go. On the show, Sam, you've had a chance to experience Reach Now. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, Reach Now, which launched in a limited beta in San Francisco a while back and then was kind of surreptitiously closed, is similar to other car sharing services in the United States, most notably Car2Go, which is also in Seattle. These are specific car sharing services. Car2Go in particular lets you pick up a car from wherever, pay per minute, which includes gas, insurance, and parking, and then park it wherever you want. I don't have to take the car back to a designated parking spot like I do with a service such as Zipcar. In dense cities, these sorts of services are popping up because people are coming out and saying, I can use my smartphone to look up a car. I can go from point A to point B, or as BMW put it, point A to point BMW. And get around in a way that's a little bit cheaper. It's not quite like Uber or Lyft. It's not depending on some other driver who you don't know. It's depending on you to be the licensed driver who pays a lifetime fee. That shot, by the way, is the car that I drove earlier, parked in my front yard overlooking Elliott Bay in Seattle.
That's your front yard?
That's my front yard, Elliott Bay. It's beautiful.
You are a jerk. You are a jerk, and I hate you, which is not true. I think you're awesome, but I wish I had that view.
I was able to park the car right there after paying 41 cents a minute plus taxes and a $1 per ride fee to get around town. Okay. The idea being with this Car2Go service, these are little dinky smart cars, which I say have two lawnmower motors duct taped together in the front. BMW's rolling out with cars such as the Mini Cooper, the all-electric i3, and the 328i. Which are just a treat to drive. I got to whip around in a couple of those today and got up to 70 miles an hour way too quickly on streets that were not rated for 70 miles an hour. it's interesting to see this as another move to get car sharing in a different direction. BMW also announced a bunch of different stuff that is not happening yet, and we're not sure if it's going to. One of the ideas was that you could, when you are a Mini or BMW owner, you could in the future rent your car out when you go on vacation. You could just put on the little sensor for the smart app and just say, I'm out of town for this many days, and people can just use your car while you're out of town. But they didn't go into detail of how much people would get paid, how that would exactly work, a whole lot of coming soon. So it's just all grandstanding until it happens. Same thing for getting to and from the airport in Seattle. Seattle's the only city right now that this is launched in this Reach Now app, and it'll be supposedly in 10 cities in North America in the near future. I do believe that that expansion is going to happen because BMW has been running its own BMW-specific car-sharing service in, I want to say, 7 or 9 different cities in Europe, mostly in Germany, along with London and a couple of others. So I do believe it's going to expand. I'm not sure about some of the other promises, for example, lending your own car. I know if I was the kind of person who ponied up for a BMW, I would not want random people off the street being able to rent it. I don't know that I would need that, $100 to come into my pocket if I'm a BMW kind of person. But perhaps they think that there's this hidden audience of people who want to buy BMWs and rent them out while they're, I don't know, Airbnb in other countries.
Yeah, that's a fascinating concept. Although I could kind of see it if you were financing your car or whatever to have that be an option to kind of get your bill down or something.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're like the special promotional lease rate of, you can kind of own a BMW.
Yeah. In fact, you own less of it this way because other people drive it while you're not. It's okay. Right. That's fascinating, though. Yeah, and they also, BMW also had a pilot of Reach Now happening in SF that ended last year. So, yeah, like you said, between European markets and their trial in SF, this is not their first time to the game. Very, very cool stuff, though. And I wonder if we're going to just continue to see more and more car companies. This is just another avenue for them.
And a way to advertise, a way to get loyalty for people who may not have bought a car. But unfortunately, they have some kinks to work out. Short story, I almost got a ticket on my way to my home office because the guidance system told me to go away that was completely illegal. Oh, no. And as I was following it, there was a cop waiting for me in Seattle. And I pointed at the whole thing saying, I swear I'm reviewing this. He let me off with a warning. But just so you know, BMW, you better iron those kinds of kinks out before people like me have to pay $200 fines.
That would have been a costly review, a costly article. All right, and finally, how about some good news in the world of SpaceX? The Falcon 9 rocket launch this afternoon was a resounding success in more ways than one. First, unlike SpaceX's previous fiery attempt to launch cargo to the space station attached to a Falcon 9 rocket last June, today's Falcon 9 rocket launched with no issues at all, marking the first time SpaceX has sent cargo to the space station. The Dragon cargo spacecraft is actually scheduled to dock Sunday morning, and it'll stick around on the ISS for a month before returning home to planet Earth on May 11th. And that's kind of one piece of this, but that's not all. This launch was also a test of Elon Musk's plan to land its Falcon 9 rocket on a drone ship after sending the cargo to space, and it's landing in the middle of the ocean. Basically, it's the first successful ocean landing. They've had 4 failed attempts. It's a drone. It's like a drone platform out in the middle of the ocean, and I can't even imagine how difficult this has to be to plan for. But I guess the fact that it's a drone platform means that it can actually move itself to where the rocket will be landing. But then you still got all the waves and the fluctuations in the ocean. It's impressive to watch the video and see how this landed. It literally just kind of landed on its butt the same way it took off.
That video was unbelievable. I watched that just a little bit ago, and although I do think it was helped by about 500 SpaceX employees screaming their heads off having pulled it off. I assume based on that screaming that they were as surprised as we as viewers were that this landing was pulled off, because technical problems have foiled previous attempts to land a Falcon on one of these autonomous drone ships. So that means SpaceX has had the opportunity to learn. And there was good weather today, tons of propellant. There was just a really good chance for that to happen. It looked super smooth. They had a whole lot of cameras just to prove it out. And it's important because they have to land rockets at sea. You can't land them elsewhere. That's going to be important for future tests and for future feasibility, that these sort of rocket landings need to happen out at sea, and having these sorts of drone landings where they can coordinate exactly the points and deal with some of the unpredictability. This was a huge step in the SpaceX program. So good for them. Plus, I just love seeing rockets take off and land, so I'm all for it.
I know, and they're a big reason why they're doing this, of course, is cost savings. The Falcon 9 costs $60 million plus $200,000 of fuel. Reusable rockets, that is a rocket that's able to land, then they just kind of fix it up instead of having to build one from scratch again. That could cut the cost by 30% the next time. And SpaceX basically has a contract with NASA to supply the ISS all the way through 2024. So it's a long-term game. This is going to help them reach that goal financially, especially. So super exciting stuff. I love this modern kind of age of space right now. When I was a kid, it was just NASA, at least here in the US. And now there's like all these external players, and they're all doing crazy stuff.
Well, it's the external players that are going to drive space exploration going forward. So successful trials like this keep the public interested, keep the feasibility of, the cash-strapped world that is NASA going forward. So every space nerd at Ars Technica is delighted. At any one successful company means that there's more chance for other people coming in and for more fees. Basically, I just want to get to Mars. Let's get me to Mars. When am I going to Mars? Let's go.
It's a good question. I mean, you could probably go to Mars in VR sooner than you'll actually ever get there. We'll talk about that in a minute. Up next, yes, Sam's going to share a few gaming stories with us, including a look at a game that I'm super excited about, especially after watching some of the footage. Uncharted 4 looks awesome. But first, let's take a minute to thank the sponsor of this episode. And it's time to get hungry. It's Blue Apron time. You need to know how to cook, and that's what Blue Apron is all about. It's going to help you learn how to cook. Not only will you feel like you know your way around the kitchen, but cooking at home is just super satisfying. It means eating healthier. It means saving money instead of ordering takeout. Takeout can be expensive, especially when you're doing it all the time. Where do you start? Blue Apron, that's where. It has you covered for less than $10 per meal. Blue Apron delivers all the fresh ingredients that you need to create home-cooked meals. You just follow the easy step-by-step instructions that you get in the box, get all the information you need. Each meal can be prepared in 40 minutes or less. No more just huge, overwhelming, untimely trips to the grocery store. No more of that sad takeout. You've had pizza far too many times. No matter your dietary preferences, Blue Apron makes it a breeze to discover and prepare dishes that you've never made before. Jamaican curry chili with chayote squash, collard greens and pita croutons, or crispy catfish sandwiches with spiced lime aioli and chopped salad right in your own kitchen. That crispy catfish sandwich one, by the way, that looks awesome, and I intend to make that. Cook with ingredients that you've never used before. Things like watermelon radishes, yuzu juice, labna cheese, all sorts of ingredients come in the box, and you're like, I've never seen this one before. Well, you get to cook with it. Recipes are between 500 to 700 calories per portion. It's all delicious. It's all good for you. And, you just got to try it for yourself to see what it's all about. Right now, you can get your first 2 meals free. Just go to blueapron.com/twit, check out this week's menu, and get your first 2 meals free. All you have to do is go to blueapron.com/twit and check it out for yourself. And we thank Blue Apron for their support of Tech News Today. All right, it's Game Time with Sam. That's the name of the segment today. First, I'm a big fan of the Uncharted game series. I've played through Uncharted 2, and it blew me away. I don't play many like console video games, but I did that one, and I loved it. I just started Uncharted 3 on the PS3, and you got to spend some time, at least a small amount of time, with Uncharted 4. Very anticipated game. What did you think?
Wow, I guess I should be very careful about spoiling anything. You have a whole, game and a half to catch up, give or take. Uncharted 4 is interesting because it's been delayed, and it's sort of one of these giant Sony tentpoles that people who bought a PlayStation 4 instead of an Xbox One have been looking forward to, because these systems have so many games in common. So Uncharted 4 is finally our chance to see a game like a series with such a giant world, such adventurous stuff, such Indiana Jones caliber modern swashbuckling, as it were, take place on a really good system. And we're looking right now. This is actually me playing. This wasn't a canned footage. They let me record myself playing a game that they're calling Wide Linear. The idea being that these Uncharted games tell a pretty linear story. They're trying to be cinematic. They're not letting you make a bunch of choices like you would in, say, Grand Theft Auto. You're going to save the day, give or take. You're going to get into some hairy spots. So how can you do that and have stories sort of play out in a long mission? For example, this one where you're riding around in Madagascar, but still feel like you have some control, like you have some chance to go somewhere big and huge. The solution that Naughty Dog has come up with is what they're calling wide linear, which is essentially a way to give you a car and go through these giant environments. So you're essentially doing the same thing you would have done on foot on PlayStation 3. So they're just broadening the worlds, giving you more places to go in a faster way and cooler way to do so. And rocking around in that 4x4 was fun. Mucking around in the mud of this demo was really fun. And that was one half of the experience, was getting to watch the hero Nathan Drake chatting with Sully and with Nathan Drake's brother Sam. Good name for a brother, by the way. As they were talking about trying to recover pirate treasure before some bad guys did. So there's that one half of it. The other half is that Naughty Dog, you may remember, did a game called The Last of Us. That was their last game on PlayStation 3, which was similar in art style and control to Uncharted, but much darker, a lot more stealth stuff, a lot more brutal about surviving an apocalypse. Well, that wasn't necessarily going to become an Uncharted way to play, but they did adapt more of the stealth stuff, meaning sneaking around, taking out giant squads of bad guys. That's a possibility now in Uncharted. I got to try out one battle in the game, which we have a little bit of video of, where I hid around in some grass. I was able to check out with a stealth scope some bad guys in the distance and mark them so I could keep a track on them, some stealth takedowns, coordinating with my buddies for the big fight. A lot of different ways to get into a big battle between being explosive with guns blazing and being sneaky and crafty. It felt very good. It felt like a really interesting melding of the old familiar Uncharted and that more dangerous, more intense Last of Us play. So the only really question mark that we have at this point is what's the actual story going to be like? Uncharted 4 has been a little bit beleaguered, not only for delays, but also because some of the voice talent quit and made some public statements saying they'd quit because they didn't like the direction of the script. And our demo had absolutely no script, no story beyond some interstitial jibber jabber between these three heroes on this 4x4. So we don't really have a perspective of what the script is like, what it is that made some people like Alan Tudyk of Firefly fame, quit the project. So we're hoping that whatever that was resolved and changed. But this is the quote-unquote final Nathan Drake game. This is him coming back to the job 20 years later, and it's supposedly the final Uncharted, the closure of the series. I never really believed that sort of thing, but I do imagine there will be some big, shocking things to come, but I have no idea what they are. But at the very least, the little bit I got to play driving around, shooting around, stealthing around was exactly what I was hoping for, and I think that you, as a fan of the series, will have at least something good to look forward to.
Yeah, the driving around aspect looked really satisfying. I was also really kind of impressed how when when Nathan Drake walks away from the car and is exploring, the conversation back at the car is kind of happening. And I'm sure if you kind of tuned into that conversation versus paying attention to what you're exploring, there's some, hints or whatever that kind of appear there, whatever. I just thought it was, from an audio perspective, because I'm an audio nerd, I appreciated how they handled that, because it actually
there's a lot
really
of that. They're really good at including these sort of extra optional kinds of stories that flesh out characters. They're very smart about that. It's a very nice thing. So I'm hoping the story that is told in those scenes is quite good. But we'll find that out in May of this year.
Excellent. May 10th, it appears, is the launch on that. Okay, shifting to VR, because that's what we usually do. Oculus's privacy policy has been coming under scrutiny this week. Tell us a little bit about why people were alarmed at what they saw.
Well, now that people have the Oculus Rift, now that it's shipping out, although there's a lot of people who don't have that, but that's a whole nother story in terms of the weird order processes. But if you do have it, you have to run the Oculus Store. Nobody's come up with a way to distribute Oculus Rift games beyond using the Oculus Store, which is connected to the internet at all times. And since Oculus is a Facebook-owned company, that made people peek into the privacy policy, the end user license agreement, all of that sort of thing. And they found a whole lot of data being captured and sent back to Facebook for its own use. Though there's promises that it's anonymized and it's aggregated, just a giant swath of data that they're using for general purpose stuff. There's essentially the ability for Facebook to really see everything you're doing when you're in the Oculus, meaning what software you play, when you choose to use it, but also how you use the headset, because there's a tracking rig. So they're saying that they're recording how you move around, how the headset moves around. And so that's sort of gotten the question mark out. And as a result, Senator Al Franken of Minnesota actually wrote an open letter to Oculus's CEO demanding answers, demanding more information. So I actually wrote a piece today about what that really means. And what I found is while there is a lot of data being collected by Oculus, the problem is that it's not that much more than other companies. That's not to say that I think every company has the right to just go through all your data willy-nilly. But if Senator Franken is going to get mad at Oculus, he has a lot of other companies to get mad at, because essentially every online entertainment platform that has any connection to the internet is watching what you use when you use it and studying all that anonymous data to improve your services, which could mean anything. Essentially, it's a buyer beware sort of situation. So Oculus is, as long as you have to connect to the internet to access its store, they're going to know at least some of what you do. So that's, I think the biggest issue for users is, number one, Facebook plus collecting data equals ugh. And then Facebook plus collecting data attached to my head is double ugh. Thankfully, at the very least, the little sensor that comes with the Oculus does not actually work as a camera. It's not taking photos of you. It's an infrared sensor. Now, if you cover your private parts in little infrared tags, Facebook will be able to see that stuff. So if you want to go to that length and be a voyeur, you have a new path.
All right. Well, there we go. At least one person out there will probably do that. Probably, I don't know if they're listening to this show, but hey, everybody on the internet, they all try something at least once. Okay, so no photographs. That was one of my questions, so that's good. But yeah, Eula's always asked for crazy things, so I don't know why this one more than anything. Probably the Facebook connection more than anything.
I think honestly, it's that people expect when they pay for something, as opposed to using Facebook, which is a free service, that their data is not thrown at like taken and used.
Yeah.
But Xbox customers have been paying to have their data used for quite some time via Xbox Live. Same with PlayStation Network. Same with Netflix. So the idea that if it's a paid product, that this shouldn't happen has not been proven out by the rest of the market. So until someone like Al Franken goes in and does a sweeping change to how all technology companies handle EULAs, this is going to continue.
Mm-hmm. All right, and finally, you've become an artiste inside Tilt Brush. It's an app I really want to get my hands on in the HTC Vive. You actually call it the Vive's killer app. Why?
Well, we were lucky. I haven't tuned in this week because I've been mostly wearing a virtual reality headset. I apologize. But the launch for the HTC Vive, the official retail launch, came, and we had a bunch of stuff about what we loved in terms of the apps. I would put Tilt Brush near the very top of the list. I think the Tilt Brush fits into this very interesting chronology of painting applications that teach people how to use a new piece of technology. Let's not forget the Macintosh, one of its very first apps was a painting app. Microsoft Paint, we make fun of it, but it came with every copy of Microsoft Windows. KidPix, HyperCard, HyperStudio, these were all educational chunks of software that were in every computer lab in the 80s and 90s to teach people how to use a mouse, how to become part of the new home and personal computer revolution. Tilt Brush does the same thing in three-dimensional space. The idea that you have X, Y, and Z axis of everything you do in virtual reality. So when I get excited about using something like the HTC Vive, it's not so much that I have this giant screen against my face, and it's not so much that I'm hanging out with a whale, though both of those are incredibly cool in the short term. What's really fascinating to me in the long term is that the interface is a whole new ballgame. This is not a mouse. This is not a touch screen. This is the opportunity to work with a 3D system in a very natural muscle memory way. If I want to paint a square, a cube, I just move my hands around in 3D space. I don't have to memorize keyboard shortcuts. I don't have to memorize weird, strange combinations of buttons. I just take this little Wii-like wand in my hand, go to the spot I want to paint, and then That's the sound that it does not make, although that'd be fun if they modded it that way. But I just go up, tap the button. I go up, I tap the button, and paint appears. Now, what's being shown right now are some of the GIFs I captured because it has a GIF camera. The nice-looking ones I did not paint. But if you do go through the article that was enclosed, you'll find that I painted a couple of things. First off, I painted a self-portrait because I am a total narcissist, but also because I wanted to see that just seemed like a very easy thing for me to do when I didn't have a book that I could look at while painting. I just had to go, okay, what's in my own head? Okay, I'll just paint my own self because I've painted self-portraits as a 2D cartoonist in the past. And I had to really learn a whole new way of painting, of drawing, because it's not like a 3D polygon sort of system.
Right.
Tilt brush is very different in that it's using these sort of two-dimensional lines in 3D space, which I consider a creative limitation. And as a result, you have to really draw things in a way. You have to think about 3D composition in a very different way. And I honestly think this was intentional on Google's part. Google being, they bought out the original developers and made this a Google product. So the little guy that you see there is this wireframe sort of guy whose lines are lassoed around in circles to sort of give the impression. This is what other artists I'd seen had done with creating human forms in Tilt Brush. I'm not anywhere near a sculptor, as you can tell by the sort of the terrifying hands and structure of this thing. But it was an opportunity to paint and draw in a way that I've never seen before. This has just never existed, certainly on the consumer level. I could imagine, you know, going into NASA or some other high-tech company and getting to play with something like this. But I was just able, hanging out in my living room, to do this at a price that I could kind of afford. And I was certainly willing to jump through those hoops. So I think that the ability for people now to just call a friend, go over and try it out. I think enough geeks are going to know at least one person who has one of these things. I'm not saying everyone's going to know one person, but if you're a geek, you probably have one friend who's squared out some room in their living room or their office or their basement or their scary gaming dungeon to have one of these rigs. And Tilt Brush, I think, even if you don't paint and even if you say, ugh, I can barely even draw a smiley face, the experience and the muscle memory is such a different way to draw. And I think it's going to really bring people in and make them go, ooh, virtual reality. That's not just a gimmick. That's not just this annoying thing on my head. This is something special.
Yeah, when the HTC Vive started, you know, hitting people's, they started arriving essentially, and people started playing around with it. I remember a couple of days ago reading, I think it was a Reddit thread on the HTC Vive and Tilt Brush specifically, and one of the posts was from a guy who put his, I think it was like an 8-year-old son inside of it, and just within like 2 minutes the kid had built like an igloo around him or whatever. And you know, of course his dad didn't know until he put the goggles on, and he put the goggles on and he's like, whoa, I'm inside this igloo that you just instinctively built around yourself. And that's kind of the power that you're talking about, this kind of instinctive way of picking it up, and you immediately know kind of something to do with it, whether you're good at it or not.
The other thing in my article was that I built, on a suggestion from someone else, I built a fireplace and a Christmas scene because someone had just said, oh, I wanted to get cozy. It was the winter. I was had a test version of it. And I remembered that for months. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to paint myself a little fireplace. And I sat down next to my table of milk and cookies, next to my Christmas tree, next to my fireplace with a log in it. And it was really overwhelming. I had a very emotional response to the fact that I had built it and I was able to sit with it, and that this was sort of an accessible form of escapism. It's just really the fact that I could build my own little crappy fireplace and really be transported as a result says something. And I imagine the more that I really sit with it, the more I take my time with it, the more terrifyingly escapist I will be able to be. But there's just so, I just can't even begin. We need a whole nother hour to go on about all the stuff that moving around in 3 dimensions in a virtual system gets me excited. But it's very cool stuff to come, and I'm going to continue being a freak about it.
It really seems like the future of CAD, essentially. Like this, you know, this is just drawing, but if you can, I can totally imagine this tool kind of extending out to where you put on the goggle and you create the room that is around you, all of the pieces, everything that surrounds you.
Oh, yeah.
Similar to what you did with the fireplace.
And if you need to tweak one little thing, boom, there's my hand right there, done. You know, it's just amazing.
Very cool stuff. More and more, I need to get myself one of those VR thingies. TNT's fan of the day is @PerOdmond on Twitter, who says, quote, been listening to TNT since I started my company in 2012, and you are all like my colleagues now. Well, I like to think of TNT as your own personal water cooler. So there you go. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup, post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we're going to find it. So speaking of kind of like virtual living room that surrounds you, what's the one thing in your house that your smartphone doesn't have control over? That's right, your couch. I knew that's what you were going to say. Well, now a new sofa called the LiftBit answers the world's most critical feature request by adding smartphone control support. Calling this a sofa kind of outright is a little bit misleading. The LiftBit, it's modular furniture in the sense that each LiftBit prototype is a hexagonal stool with a linear actuator underneath that motorizes the sections into different seating positions so it can elevate it or lower it, that sort of stuff. You stack a number of these LiftBits side by side, you create kind of a grid of them essentially in whatever shape you want to create a wider or a larger piece of furniture. And then on your smartphone or your tablet, you can use hand gestures to change the height configuration of all of the modules together. So so basically you can create, if you want, you could create a bed, or you could create a chair, or whatever. I mean, you can use your imagination just by watching the video here. I imagine this would look really nice in your VR space.
I imagine I would look just like that. There's some very interesting people hanging out in this.
Yeah, it's a little weird that they're just kind of dancing and stuff. I don't get it, but I do a little. I don't understand where the dancing, but whatever. Whatever works for them. So one LiftBit. Okay, see, you obviously get it. €799, or that translates to around $911 US. King size bed is 18 of those. That's 12,000 euros, or $13,682. So that might stop you dancing, because that's not inexpensive. I can't hear the money. I can't hear the price. I'm too busy dancing with the feelings. So then you're obviously getting at least one of these, right?
Oh, God, no. No.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's kind of cool. It's actually not even on sale yet, so you can't get it. So there. It's going to be in an exhibition up until about September 12th. Then it'll be on sale. And they say the goal is to get people creative in designing their own space. So your furniture isn't just a thing you put somewhere. You actually design it to a certain degree. I don't know. Kind of looked uncomfortable, to be honest. But that's my opinion. All right. Hey, that's all we got, man. Sam Machkovech, always a pleasure getting you on the show, and especially for the entire show. Really appreciate you coming on and filling the unfillable shoes of Megan Maroney on this show. You did an awesome job, as you always do. So thank you for coming on today.
I appreciate Megan getting sick. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much for giving me a reason to get out of fancy BMWs and hang out in my office. But yes.
Really appreciate it. Tell people, well, of course, you're working on the BMW story. You got anything else in the works? Where should people find all the stuff you're working on?
Well, over at Ars Technica is where you can find all of my juicy bits. I'm going to be heading to the Emerald City Comic-Con here in Seattle throughout the weekend. There's some very geeky stuff. I've been tipped off there's a panel that teaches people how to take their very old video game systems, we're talking Sega Master System kind of stuff, and plug it into a rig so you can Twitch with your old retro game systems and upgrade all the visuals so that they look good when broadcast from a crappy old 80s game system all the way to Twitch's ones and zeros. So I will be keeping an eye on all of that stuff and plenty more. I also have a feature about one of the best VR games. It's called Hover Junkers. I got to hang out with those guys in LA, and there will be a feature coming up about that hopefully next week. So keep it tuned to Ars Technica, at Sam Red, if you want to listen to me complain about bad customer service and really good tacos.
Excellent. Sam, it's always a pleasure, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend.
Yep. See you guys.
See you later. Monday's guest will be Ian Thompson from The Register. It'll be awesome having Ian back. I always love it when he's on. TNT records every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 12 a.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be a part of the show always by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv. Please do. Let us know what you thought about one of the things from today's show. We'll read it on Monday, all right? That's a challenge. Or you can leave us a short voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW. You can find us on Twitter. We are at Tech News Today TV. But really, the thing you need to remember is that our show is always on our site at twit.tv/TNT. All the information that you need is there, so head on over and check it out. I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter. Thanks to our technical director, Kara Cole, and all the folks here who help us produce this show every single day of every single week. And thanks to you for talking tech with us today. We'll see y'all on Monday. Bye, everyone. All right, high five, Sam. Oh, there we go.